So earlier this week, I want to call you back to a couple of things that I pointed out. First of all, I mentioned that either Vanderbilt or Virginia was going down. I flipped a coin in my head. I went with Vanderbilt. They prevailed in overtime in an incredible football game. By the way, Hugh Freeze leaves and Auburn's offense goes for more points than it has in a game that means something this season. Coincidence, is it? Boy, it seems a little sketchy. But between Virginia and Vanderbilt, I was confident, hey, one of these teams is going down. Well, it winds up being Virginia. Oh, Cal was inexplicably, I thought about this as a best bet, but I was just terrified. I didn't understand. Vegas was either off its rocker or the smartest thing that we have ever seen. Turns out in this example, off its rocker. Cal was an 18.5-point underdog. I thought Jaren Kiave Sangopolatele wasn't going to play. I thought he was perhaps hurt, that something that I didn't know was taking place. And nope, Vegas just thought that, and they went to Louisville and won outright in overtime on 4th and goal. Went for it, could have gone for the tie. Wilcox rolls the dice, maybe with his job on the line, and comes up with a win. The highest of vibes for Cal fans after that game on my 5-point scale, because how much better can it feel than beating a top 15 team on the road? But here's the problem. The ACC is getting one team in the playoff. There is no way for them to recoup what happened this weekend. Virginia going down at home to Wake Forest. Jake Dickert should probably be the ACC Coach of the Year, or at least in the running, because the Demon Deacons are bowl eligible and they've still got 3 games to go. They're 3-3 in conference play. You realize that Wake Forest has the same conference record, has a half game better conference record right now than Clemson. Who could have, imagine if I'd predicted that before the year. I would have been called insane, non-knower of ball. And I'm not saying I predicted it. I'm just pointing out how crazy it is that happened. That is this thing that exists right now. Wake Forest has beaten SMU and now Virginia on the road. The Cavaliers' offense inexplicably disappeared against the Wake Forest defense. Credit the Demon Deacons, but the lowest of vibes for Virginia fans, and the same for Louisville fans. Because you now look up and realize there is no way, unless you win the ACC, that you're going to make the college football playoff. Now, that's possible. So if you want to view that as a silver lining, you can. But you had Louisville as a one-loss team in the ACC, Virginia as a one-loss team in the ACC. They just suffered their first actual conference loss against Wake Forest here. It's not going to happen. And you know what? It shouldn't happen. I'm not coming on here and saying it's wrong. I'm coming on here and saying I preemptively agree with what I expect the committee to do. And I'm going to talk about the Group of 5 playoff race on tomorrow's show because, boy, I apparently set off some very passionate. I respect it. Just want to make that clear. But I set off a passionate corner of the internet by declaring Tulane the Group of 5 playoff favorite after this week. That's what they will be in my rankings. We'll see if the committee agrees. But that's for Monday's show. For today, let's talk about the ACC and the position they're in. So Miami throttles Syracuse. Okay, nothing to see here. 38-10. The Hurricanes wind up winning. So they're 3-2 in the ACC, and Virginia's 5-1, and Louisville's 4-2. But then you go, wait a minute, could SMU do it again? Yep. That's what happened here. That's what has happened. SMU's losses have not been in conference play except for one to Wake Forest, but they lost to TCU and Baylor. And SMU was a team before the season that I talked about as a team with the potential to get an at-large bid for the ACC. Well, obviously they can't do that, but they have just one conference loss on a 50-plus yard field goal. But that's also reflected to Wake Forest. That's also reflective of how weak the ACC is. That's just the way. 2 losses to Big 12 teams that are well, TCU is good. Baylor is not. SMU lost to them both. And SMU might be the team I'd take right now to go make the college football playoff. They've done it before. I've got proof of concept. They made it a season ago. They have to win the conference championship game this time, which of course they failed to do last season, but sometimes you learn more from your losses than you do from your wins. So Virginia came into this week at 14, Louisville at 15. When you lose at home to unranked ACC teams, boy, I haven't settled on my top 25 and how far I'm going to drop them yet. I bet the committee punishes them severely. Severely. I saw some backlash flying around online. By the way, it didn't help that Duke, I thought they would not cover 9.5, but they lost on the road to UConn, who's 5-0 at home. Jim Mora Jr., what a coaching job he's doing there for the Huskies. But that's not an ACC game. That's just a game that happened that, again, shows what I'm talking about here, that the ACC right now is clearly fourth. The committee saw that going into their first playoff rankings, and they are going to be able to double down in a big way. Because when you have the non-conference resume that the ACC has in this season, 2025, you do not get benefit of the doubt of maybe our bottom tier teams are just good. Nope, because where are the quality wins? They don't exist. They are just simply not out there. I mean, the best ACC non-conference win is probably Miami over Notre Dame. And Miami has since lost twice. And now one of those losses looks worse because it was to Louisville at home. So the glimmer of hope for two ACC teams going into the playoff, not that I think it'll matter. I don't think any of these teams are getting past the maybe quarterfinals. Maybe. You get the wrong matchup. The ACC team, like last year, could be one and done. Both SMU and Clemson lost in the first round. I don't see a team right now that I feel confident enough is able to get past a first round playoff game. Now it's matchup dependent. But the ACC right now is going to be a spoiler. That's what's going to happen here. The ACC champ is going to, unless it's Georgia Tech, it's going to feel like a spoiler. And that is the one potential saving grace that the ACC has. I believe it will wind up being a one-bid league. But if Georgia Tech, even then I don't know, because Georgia Tech has one loss. Their non-conference game was at Colorado, and they won that game. They won that game, but Georgia Tech's probably going to have another loss on the schedule. They play Georgia later this year. They almost won last season, so maybe they'll be able to do it again. But they've also got to play Pitt. And next week, I suppose I should say, they go at Boston College. So if Georgia Tech wins the next 3 games, yeah, it could happen. Other than that scenario, that's the glimmer of hope for the ACC, is you need Georgia Tech to wind up 11-1. 11-1 with a win over Georgia is into the college football playoff no matter what. I will scream that from the not scream, because if I scream into this microphone, then that's not going to be a pleasant experience for you, and I'm trying to give you something that you enjoy, not something you have to endure. Thank you for being here, by the way. So I think that if Georgia Tech goes 11-1, there will be, understandably, a huge groundswell of support. And then if they were to lose the ACC championship game, then whoever would have beaten them in this hypothetical gets in automatically, and Georgia Tech would be in at 11-2. There's no way you keep out an 11-win Georgia Tech team with a win over the Georgia Bulldogs. That would be a miscarriage of justice to the highest degree in the college football playoff era. Does it feel like that's even likely, though? Because remember, Georgia Tech has to avoid a look-ahead spot the game before on November 22nd against Pitt, who's in the top 25 and is playing much better football since they made a quarterback change earlier this year. So Virginia, second loss. Louisville, second loss. There is nothing about the resume of these teams that says you're going to be an at-large. Miami being at 18, which I contended and do continue to say is too low in the initial college football playoff rankings, tells us that the committee is not going to look at the ACC and view any of them as legitimate playoff threats at 10-2. And I don't know that I can blame them. The non-conference games have to matter, and the ACC flopped for the most part.